back for this week's edition of What is Tony Khan Thinking, also known as AEW Dynamite for November 9th, 2022. Now, to be fair, with that little introduction, I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy the episode, because for the most part I did. But as usual, there's a couple of little elements to it where I kind of sit back and just kind of stare at it. My eyebrow goes up and I'm like, so what exactly are you thinking? And also there are some segments and some matches in there where it's like, hey, this match was good, but at the same time, like, where's Miro? Just as an example that I would give, and I'll get to that portion of it when I get to the review. So without preamble, I will say that for the most part I enjoyed the episode. There's some elements to it that I still have kind of concerns about. Now, one thing also that kind of concerns me as well is that we've got this week, and then next week is going to be the go-home show for Full Gear. So there are some elements that are starting to wind into place for Full Gear. Some elements feel kind of rushed. We kind of have to push our way into it, and other ones just don't seem to make a lot of sense right now. So it's one of those things where it's a bit of a mixed bag, but there is plenty of good. And I would say it's a substantially better episode than last week. I wouldn't say it's a great show or a very good show, but it was probably a good show. And I'll get to my final grade at the end of it, but let's get into it here. So the episode starts with the Acclaimed and FTR taking on Swerve and Our Glory versus the Guns with the Firm. So a good solid tag team match. We've got a continuation of the dissension between Swerve and Keith Lee, so we're playing that off, and it's noted by the commentary as well, which is great. FTR is still getting a phenomenal reaction. Billy Gunn actually ran in, near the beginning there and attacked Swerve pre-match. So we got the little continuation of that. So again, continuation and continuity, we appreciate that. So that's always a good thing. The chants and the strong crowd there in Boston. So that was a theme throughout the episode. So good crowd in Boston certainly helped out a lot of things involving the show. And then we had a brief tease of the Acclaimed and FTR having a few communication issues. They kind of bumped into each other and kind of stared at each other, but then kind of cooled it down. Obviously, leading the possibility that eventually we get FTR and the Acclaim, which I think would be great, with the FTR having 3 different tag team championships and getting everything except an AEW tag team match, which, by the way, is a horrific logic flaw for Tony Khan. And I'll get to a different logic flaw that I've talked about in previous weeks, but I want to bring it up again since it's still kind of fun for me, but I know it could drag it. It's wear its welcome pretty quickly if we don't resolve it sooner rather than later. But anyway, so that's a bit of a logic flaw. So otherwise, a good sequence from Anthony Boems. He was able to kind of showcase himself a little bit before the heel team cleared his teammates. So there was a little bit of that. Now, I did notice on my end, so maybe this is just me, from my cable company, but I noticed there seemed to be a lot of audio drops and video issues during the latter portions of this match. It continued a little bit after that, but it eventually kind of cleared up. So I don't know if it was just me or if anybody else got any audio issues and audio drops. So I'm kind of putting it out there in case anybody else did. So I'm just kind of curious if it was the feed or if it was an issue with basically my cable company. But anyway, for the most part, even with the audio dropped, I was still able to see the video and watch the match, so it was fine. But it was kind of weird to suddenly have the audio cut out on me or get really quiet and then kind of get loud again. It was just bizarre. But anyway, so multiple multi-man moves, Swerve jumped to the outside, and then there was a suplex to the outside, a lot of them. I do find, and this is something maybe I'll touch on later on in the review, I do find that AEW match structure tends to follow a lot of the indie formula, which works in certain instances, but it also means you kind of double and triple and quadruple up on the same kind of moves. You kind of wear out its welcome. It's one of those things where if you do too many times, you actually lose a little bit of the impact if you do it over and over and over again. I would want to show a little bit more restraint, but again, I'll talk about it more when I get to the latter portion of the review. Anyway, so Acclaimed and FTR win with their tag team finishers. Great match overall, great starter for the crowd. The crowd was into it. Great start. Then we get into an FTR video package / promo. Sorry, I shouldn't say I wrote FTR, but I actually meant MJF video package / promo. So they actually took some video from him doing an interview where he addressed the camera directly. It also gave an explanation for him not being on TV. So he basically said his doctor said if he wanted to be 100% for Full Gear, he needed to avoid, being traveling around and then having to deal with any potential issues with that. That's after the attack from the Firm. So that's actually a good logical reason for MJF, even in character, to not be at the arena. But he was still able to deliver a full-fledged promo. So he suggests that the match has the potential to be a generational shift. He compares himself to The Rock, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes, and others. He put Jon Moxley over quite a bit as part of that promo, and he stated that he was born to be a professional wrestler and contrasted himself to Jon Moxley, who had to work hard and earn his way into getting to that level. He says he can wave the flag of professional wrestling, so, that kind of plays into it as well. and ran through his moments in the spotlight that were taken by others, including the last one that was taken by a press conference. So there's a little CM Punk dig in there, so well played by him. Very, very good promo in kind of a different environment, because it was kind of a pre-tape, but it was a pre-tape from a podcast episode, really, but he's addressing the camera. So it's one of those things where the crowd is still getting the promo, and it's being addressed, obviously, in the format of a promo where he gets to talk uninterrupted and say everything he wants to say, and it was good. And it was good juxtaposition with the Jon Moxley promo that'll come up later on in the review. So we got to speak to the challenger first, and then got to hear from the champion afterwards. So it was good from that perspective. So next, we have a Stokely Hathaway promo, so kind of a double up. Again, Tony Khan loves his double ups, but in this case, at least it somewhat made sense because Stokely Hathaway and the firm have a little bit of a storyline going with MJF as well. And this is where I say that AEW has this weird mixed bag, because they're excellent at developing this idea of MJF having this weird kind of tweener role, this thing happening here. And at the same time, you got Stokely Hathaway and the firm having their own kind of issue with MJF, and at the same time having that issue. So you can have these two concurrent storylines happening related to the same characters, but in other categories, you struggle to have one coherent storyline. So the inconsistency to me has always been a bit of a problem for me, and it remains to be a problem for me. But anyway, we'll move on from that. But the Stokely Hathaway promo specifically speaks for his explanation of turning on MJF. You know, he was very disappointed. He was mad that MJF wanted to be liked, kind of playing into this whole idea of the dissension between the two, and that Stokely was his best friend, and he wanted to be there with him when he won the championship. But at the same time, he wanted to do it a certain way, the way they had always done it. But then MJF suddenly wanted to be liked, and he was contrasting it with kind of the way they had done business previously and the way they had, operated in their friendship. But then he concludes with kind of his line here at the end: win, lose, or draw at Full Gear, I'll see you in Hell, Max. So good solid thing from Stokely Hathaway. Another pre-tape, but a solid one, I think. And I do enjoy when they kind of step outside of the arena environment and allow the performer to be able to do this. It also lets them do however many takes they need to get to in order to deliver their lines in a good way. So it's one of those things where I don't want to use it every 5 seconds. But I don't mind the idea of going outside the arena, doing a pre-tape, and recording something that is allowed to breathe and to operate in a certain way. But don't do too much of it, because in the arena, you're basically just watching screen. So it kind of loses some of the impact, but I just want to make sure we understand that. So next up here, we got Ethan Page versus Eddie Kingston for the AEW Championship Eliminator Tournament, because it's AEW and we have tournaments on tournaments on tournaments. But anyway, so the winner of the tournament gets a title shot at AEW Winner is Coming, which is fine. It gives you a logical destination for the winner of it, so that's fine. Excalibur does a great job on commentary running down the Ethan Page and Eddie Kingston's history on the independents, a lot of it, which is great. It gives a little background between the two. And then also, but in the end of the day, back and forth, hard-hitting match, a lot of each guy got to hit a variety of different moves as far as is concerned. I don't do a lot of the play-by-play, but the end result was that Ethan Page wins with the Ego's Edge off the middle rope. So kind of a avalanche Ego's Edge. So a little extra, because Eddie Kingston at this point is at a level where you're not going to defeat him necessarily with either one finisher or with a standard finisher. So you give him the avalanche Ego's Edge, but you're still protecting the Ego's Edge, which to me is a fun move, but it's, a good, Razor Ramon / Scott Hall tribute. But at the same time, you should protect it, because even though it's kind of a silly looking move, I'm glad that it finishes people, which is always a good thing. I'm never going to complain about that, and that's always a great thing. So anyway, so it ends up being one from that regard, which is great. And then we proceed from here. So through the power of editing, you got to skip the fact that for some reason my notes here decided to suddenly shift all the way to the bottom of the notes. So obviously the laptop is cursed. But anyway, moving on. Maybe from Danhausen, who knows? Anyway, so moving on from there, Renee talks to Roosh and Dark Order. So it's a continuation of the whole deal with 10. And I got to be 100% honest with you. I am glad for the continuity. So I respect it. I appreciate the continuity. I don't care. The whole idea is like, okay, recruit 10, don't recruit 10, have a battle with the Dark Order, don't have a battle with the Dark Order. Just get it over with, man. I love Roosh. I appreciate that 10 is doing certain things. I appreciate his development, although obviously in ring, he's very limited. But I do enjoy Roosh. So it's one of those things where under the right circumstances, I can like this and get behind it. But I don't care about this. I don't understand. I just offer the man a lot of money or beat him up one way or the other. Like, just get it over with. This one is a continuation that I do not require. I don't need this to keep droning on and on and on. Just make a decision, someone do something, and let's move on from this one. Next, Ari Daivari, I think Ari Daivari, I want to say, is in the ring making an offer. The offer is he's willing to offer the full services of his butler for the TNT Championship. My next note here is thoughts. This is stupid and I don't care. Now, at the end of the day, it was just basically a delay tactic before Wardlow comes out. But the point is, it was still stupid. Like, just have him be there and have the open challenge and just be done with it. I don't really care about Ari Daivari, and I certainly don't care about his butler. But I don't think it really added anything to the beginning of this match. It just seemed like a waste of time. But Anyway, so Wardlow comes out with Samoa Joe, open challenge for the TNT Championship. Wardlow throws out the Butler, and after feigning like he was going to take the deal, he kills Daivari. He wins by Powerbomb Symphony. Moving on. He grabs the microphone, calls out Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs comes out, and they're kind of staring at each other, jaw-jacking at each other. Great. Wardlow says to Hobbs that he's glad he has a worthy opponent. He won't lose the title. I'm paraphrasing here. The title is his, and that he will win every title in the company. Meanwhile, Samoa Joe is behind him and kind of reacts to that comment. And then as Hobbs is kind of walking towards the ring, he hits him with the ROH television title. Samoa Joe has turned heel. Terrible. Awful. Preposterous. And then Samoa Joe chokes Wardlow out. And at the same time, Hobbs is yelling at Joe that he'll see him too. So, they're basically implying that they're not in cahoots. It's just that Samoa Joe took exception to Wardlow's statement. And I, for whatever reason, this is the moment that they decided all right, this is going to end War Joe. And now Samoa Joe is, against Wardlow. Even though Wardlow has a potentially TNT championship match against Powerhouse Hobbs, who frankly I would like to see get that attention as well. And I also want to see Wardlow get that attention, and at the same time I want to see Samoa Joe get that attention. Guys, leave my hosses alone. We can have hoss fight, but we can't have too much confusion in hoss fight. Right now there are 2 titles and 3 hosses. Focus, people. We need focus here. Look, I'm glad we're proceeding on it, and I actually enjoy all 3 gentlemen involved in this situation. I'm glad that we're going to do something with them. But at the same time, like, if Samoa Joe is kind of there, then how is that going to play with Powerhouse Hobbs? And at the same time, you got the ROH Television Championship, and you got the TNT Championship. And honestly, I would just focus on the TNT Championship. And one thing, if you've noticed, this is the first mention of ROH in this show. There will be a couple more, but compared to last week, much better. And that to me is a big in the plus sign, not having to mention ROH nearly as much in this review. Thank goodness for that. Anyway, moving on. Next, Jade promo pre-tape with Renee talks about the making the Nyla Rose match official for Full Gear for the true TBS champion Nyla Rose, who still has that title. Now, remember when I said about logic flaws earlier? Let me bring this one up again. I already told you guys, I love the Nyla Rose stealing thing, master criminal, whatever this stupid thing is supposed to be. Last week was a severe low on it. It really hurt the whole thing for everybody because the lame commentary, the fact that Marina Shafir can't wrestle at this point for whatever reason, the fact that Jade is not an amazing in-ring worker either, but getting much better. But the point is, you're taking somebody who is inexperienced versus somebody who should have experience but kind of sucks, and you combine that, and it's terrible. And we're doing smoke and mirrors, and we're doing this commentary from the ramp, but at the same time, look. We have to resolve the fact that Tony Khan apparently doesn't know how to get somebody to do what they want them to do. And I guess that kind of plays into real life at the moment. But the point is that you could just order Nyla Rose to give up that title, or she gets fined or fired or something. Like, why on earth is Jade having to chase? Where in the world is Nyla Rose? And she has to chase her around the countryside in order to try to get the title back before she finally gets a title match, which the whole point of this was to get a title match, which is great. I enjoy that, and I appreciate it. And at least it's a storyline to give us a title match. And it's actually played out over weeks. So I appreciate that. Look, it's a women's storyline that does not involve Britt Baker, which, Britt Baker's one of my favorites, so I'm not going to complain about that. But at the same time, it's one that doesn't involve the AEW Women's Championship, and it's one that doesn't involve Britt Baker, and it got to go on for weeks. So I'm not going to complain about the end result, but there have been some bumps along the road. This one was just, at least we got a pre-tape in there to continue it and to explain that now we're going to have the match. Fine, great, but then we'll move on. And again, we're back to stacking, if you guys remember what I talked about before. Next is the Britt Baker and Saraya face-to-face. So Tony Schiavone is interviewing the official designated interviewer of Britt Baker. So Saraya comes out. Britt Baker comes out first, and then Saraya comes out. Saraya says she's cleared to wrestle. So finally, the great mystery has been resolved, and Britt Baker now gets to say her piece. She said she built AEW into a fortress, and that superstars like Saraya wanted to move in. She's damn proud of that. And then Saraya goes into her life story, discussing her career, personal issues, arenas she's been in, and that Baker doesn't know what it takes. So the whole idea is that Saraya is big league because she's done all these things. Although I would point out that a lot of the time she put in, as far as the years she's been in the business, she has been injured for a good chunk of that latter portion of it. Not entirely through fault of her own. Let's be 100% fair about this. But at the same time, she spent probably the last 5 years or so injured. So do we really count that? She was commissioner and stuff. It's not like she wasn't involved in wrestling. She was. But at the same time, that doesn't count as in-ring. If you're talking about in-ring, you were not in the ring during that time period. You basically were retired kind of early. You were still in your 20s when that happened, even though you had obviously started wrestling I think she was 12 or 13 or something like that. So she had a long wrestling career. Let's be fair about that. But at the same time, she has been injured for a good chunk of it, unfortunately, through a variety of different ailments and unfortunate incidents. And there's been a lot of that. And obviously she has had some personal issues. She had a movie made about her, produced by The Rock. So obviously she's got a great story and a family, a great family legacy as far as wrestlers and everything. But it's one of those things. It was kind of a weird thing because in AEW, a lot of the stuff she did doesn't necessarily mean anything because a lot of that legacy is quote unquote either pre-WWE or WWE. So it's one of those things where like AEW, Britt Baker does have kind of a point, even as a heel, that technically Saraya shouldn't be declaring at her house because she literally just got there. So it's one of those things. Like, I understand the concept and the line and obviously, but it is kind of a weird thing. But anyway, whatever. This big emotional segment of it was meant to basically build up to now they're going to have the match at Full Gear. She says she's going to have the match for them at Full Gear. That's going to be her big comeback against Britt Baker, et cetera, et cetera. Britt tries to attack her and then she takes a rampage. I don't know if they're going to call it something else in AEW. I would assume so, but it was the former rampage, basically the DDT, I guess you pick up somebody and then you DDT them from that position. So it's kind of a cradle DDT. I'm not sure what I would call the move, but it's the former rampage move if you remember that one. So my general note on this was that the segment was okay, but the match was pretty telegraphed for a while ago. So the melodrama kind of dragged it out a bit before it was concluding. But look, it was a continuation of a storyline. And this is another storyline for the women outside of the AEW Women's Championship, which we'll get to in a little bit, but it was isolated from that. So that's good. We appreciate that. Next, Sanjay Dutt and Lethal and Singh talking to the factory, kind of implying that they were paid off, as far as their participation in last week. Then they were interrupted by Danhausen, Orange Cassidy to set up a match versus Lee Johnson for Orange Cassidy. And then also Best Friends stuck around to talk to Lethal. And this is a setup for a match between Trent Beretta and Jay Lethal. Now, my next note on this is that Lethal attacked him during the entrance. I don't really care about this random match, is the note after that. And then Lethal wins with distractions from Singh via lethal injection. Now, the reason I say I don't care about this match is not because I have any issue with Jay Lethal. I do not. And that I have any issue with Trent Beretta. I do not. I enjoy both of those gentlemen. I also enjoy what they can do in the ring in terms of matches. And I enjoy the fact that they can have a great match together. But here's the key. When I look at this is the kind of match that honestly I could leave on the cutting room floor and find something for Miro to do. Or several other guys who fall under this category who is like, guys, you still have them under contract. Unless they're supposed to be going to ROH, which right now they're not. And I'll talk about a guy who I thought was going to ROH in a minute. But the point is, you got this here. Why don't we see Miro here? This would be a great opportunity for Miro to get kind of a return match of some kind and maybe start establishing him for, future things. But instead we got kind of a throwaway Trent Beretta Jay Lethal match, which was fine. It was a decent match for what it was. And I guess it leads into the next segment, and I'll talk about that segment here now. But the point is, I don't care about this match right now. Just a match for match's sake isn't always the best thing when you've got a very compressed timetable. You don't have that many hours of live TV if you're AEW. You really want to make use of all those minutes. And this was unfortunately a waste of a couple of those minutes that could have been used on something else. But anyway, so they get to the back. They basically get up the ramp after winning the match, Jay Lethal. And then Tony Schiavone wants to talk with Sanjay. He takes the microphone away from Tony, references Jeff Jarrett, and then Jeff Jarrett comes out. My next line, my thoughts. Great. Jarrett gets on the microphone. My brain cells are dying. Goes through his entourage and their credentials. At least he puts them over and, promotes them a little bit. And then he calls out Sting and Darby Allin, which will lead to a match shortly. I'll get to that. Next, Renee with Jungle Boy Jack Perry. So now he's officially Jungle Boy Jack Perry. We're going to lean into Jack Perry-ness. Another promo, promo segment. He will challenge Luchasaurus and Christian Cage on Rampage. My next line. Why not just challenge them now and not waste the time? Good point, me, from the past. Why not just challenge them since you happen to already be there? But he says he wants to do it face-to-face, so be it, I guess. But at the same time, why doesn't Luchasaurus and Christian Cage just attack him? And also, Christian Cage says he was done with them. And I do understand that he attacked Luchasaurus, but at the same time, if the idea is revenge, then they could literally just attack him in the back. Like, there's sometimes some really dumb logic flaws over here. Just attack the guy in the back. And also just challenge him while you're doing the promo. But anyway, I guess we need to do it twice. So next, Jon Moxley comes out for a promo. You will notice a pattern here. This is the third straight promo segment. Again, they're not bad promo segments, but we don't need to stack up so many of these same thing over and over again. But anyway, Jon Moxley comes out, and as Jon Moxley, as is generally the case, is a very solid promo. So you're not going to have too much issue with Jon Moxley coming out and doing his thing. So this is great. He starts off with a story of facing William Regal for the first time at age 25 or 26, getting beat up, and then using that as motivation to come back, train harder, and beat him the second time before he got taken under his wing. And then kind of the way he phrased it is like, that's when the real work begins, And then he switches over. It's a juxtaposition to him talking about MJF, being a young guy and then losing him the first time and then wanting to come back again and then pointing out some of the differences between the two of them. And then a good strong promo from Moxley, I would say. And then he basically concludes with everything you've done to this point has been easy. Kind of, juxtaposing his background and how hard he had to work and the difficulties and everything with MJF's, relatively easy path, which also kind of plays into what MJF said about how hard Jon Moxley had to work. But then MJF says, I was born for this, he's basically a prodigy, so on and so forth, and kind of contrasting the two guys in terms of that's kind of the storyline thread they've gone with this, which is fine. At least they've got a little background. They have had a match before, and they were able to play off that for these two promos. Next, an Elite being deleted promo. Another promo, but this one's a video package. This time around, it's a good one that shows their childhoods, histories, and it alludes a variety of times to Full Gear. Then we get a video package. Are you noticing a pattern, guys? Yes, another video package, this one for Sammy Guevara and Bryan Danielson for the main event. But it was a good one. It was a really good one to set it up, and the main event wasn't just about to happen, so they didn't do it just before. So it was a good setup for it beforehand to set everybody up for it and to kind of talk through it and let Bryan Danielson have a nice, fiery promo because he's very good at those. So my note was they should be more diligent about doing that. I'd like to see that for more matches to set them up and give a little bit more stakes. So either way, I was confident it was going to be a good match and that's going to be the main event. So I figured we were good. But there we go. Now next, we finally get a match, an actual match in the ring. It's Jamie Hayter taking on Sky Blue. Good reaction for Hayter has been the case, but obviously the longer we drag this out, the more opportunity we are to lose that momentum. But she is joined by Rebel, and then slowly walking behind her is Britt Baker, who's selling the Rampage from earlier. So that's good. She's still selling it. She's kind of slow and gingerly getting up the ramp, but she's joining the entourage there with Jamie Hayter. And then Sky Blue comes out, but then is joined by Toni Storm, which is good. Then we get to see Toni Storm with the championship and everything, and it kind of plays into the Jamie Hayter-Toni Storm thing, so we at least get the champion on TV kind of acknowledging that there is still that tension with her and Jamie Hayter because they're going to have a match coming up at Full Gear. I would have preferred if one of these video packages or promos had been involved with this, but her physical presence there at least plays into this and continues the storyline. So that's good. So like I said, good move getting Toni out there to sell the match. So good. At least being around, she's doing something. Now, as far as the match itself, I don't have a ton of notes about it, but one of the things I do want to note on there is I hated there was a weak kick on the ground that Sky Blue uses. So there's a thing where I'm trying to think of how to describe it. She kind of just falls down and then there's like a kick, but it's a really weak looking kick. It's always terrible. Like it looks awful. And I've seen a few I think Anna Jay does a very similar move and it never looks good. And on the match, there was too much interference and too much offense for Sky Blue. And this is kind of an issue that I think they have with stuff like this is that Jamie Hayter, I think, is very selfless. I don't think she's selfish as far as that's concerned. But at the same time, that's to her detriment. The idea here is that we're selling towards a championship match with Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm. She already has an entourage, but they're already interfering on her behalf. But at the same time, we've got this weird thing where the crowd kind of wants to turn Jamie Hayter, but we've basically stalled it because of the Saraya thing with Britt Baker, but at the same time, they still want it, and they want to cheer for Jamie Hayter. So the fact that she needs help, and then on top of it, Sky Blue still gets a ton of offense in there, all things considered, it's not great. Also leading into, she's about to have a championship match. I kind of wanted, pick a different opponent if you need to. Give her a dominant victory. Give her a solid, dominant victory, which kind of gives her momentum going into, the go-home show, and then going into the match at Full Gear. That would be my preference and the way that I would go with it. So going into a championship match, she needs to look a little stronger going in. And that's kind of my point. So then it concludes on kind of an awkward spot. I'm trying to think of what the move is called. I want to say it's like an electric chair, but basically Sky Blue was kind of sitting on Jamie Hayter's shoulders. They do kind of a thing where she's supposed to be twisting, and then she kind of picks her up, and basically just turns into a lariat. Really what it comes down to is she starts off, on her shoulders, and they turn it into a lariat. It's kind of a weak-looking lariat compared to her normal-looking lariat. But that's the one that wins the match and ends it. So that's fine. And then she starts putting the boots to Sky Blue. And then immediately Toni Storm runs in. Jamie Hayter, gets out of the ring. And then, we finish with Jamie Hayter grabbing the title because Toni Storm had left it on the outside. So that's kind of the shot they go into commercial with. Next up, we've got a promo for Brian Cage taking on Dante Martin on Rampage for the AEW Championship Eliminator. Question that I pose. Isn't Brian Cage supposed to be ROH? He's literally in an ROH faction. Why is he in the AEW Championship Eliminator? Question mark. I'll leave it at that. That's my question. That's literally my question. I don't understand it. It was a decent promo. The video promo was fine. I enjoy Brian Cage. I enjoy Dante Martin. It should be fun. But why is he in the title eliminator for AEW? I don't understand. Also, where's Miro? Next, in the back, Ricky Starks is attacked by Lance Archer for reasons. ... That was my note. That was it. I'm happy to see Lance Archer. Great. Ricky Starks, I guess, has a mini feud with Lance Archer. But again, I'm back to for reasons. Sure. Why not? Whatever. Next, main event. Bryan Danielson taking on Sammy Guevara, 2 out of 3 falls. Bryan Danielson wins the first fall. Now next, the note that I have got on here is that Sammy Guevara lands a very nasty GTH. A nasty GTH. And I watched it 3 times, and there's nothing that I can see that would indicate there is no way he didn't make solid contact with Bryan Danielson's head. Now, I think Bryan Danielson, I guess towards the end of it, broke his nose or whatever. It wouldn't shock me if that DTH is what did it. Like, it was a solid contact. Or it looks like solid contact from the angles that I was looking at it and the replay I was watching. Like, that was a nasty, nasty move and a nasty landing on it. A little questionable, but anyway. So Sammy Guevara wins the second fall. And then during the match, they announced the tag team of Sting and Darby Allin taking on Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. This was, promo mid-match while this match is happening. My next line is groan. Danielson wins the last fall by submission. So great match. But why are they killing each other on TV with a pay-per-view around the corner? That's really the question that I kind of concluded with. Now, as far as the groan, the reason being it's 2022 and I've got a match involving Jeff Jarrett and Sting. Now, Sting, I enjoy him in this kind of situation, this kind of one-off, once in a blue moon situation. Maybe he'll do a splash off of something or jump off of something. He's been very good at that. That's fine. And Jeff Jarrett, like I said, looks to be in decent shape. But I don't really want to see Jeff Jarrett wrestle in 2022. But I guess you kind of have to. The 2 old guys are going to have to face off against each other one more time at a combined age of 457 years old or whatever age they are. Jeff Jarrett is younger than Sting, I think. I'm pretty confident he is. But they're both old. Sting is at least legendary old. Jeff Jarrett's kind of most of his success was late WCW and TNA. Not great, is all I'm trying to say. He was fine, but he overstayed his welcome in all cases. Choke on that, Slapnuts. 2022, and we're getting this match, so I guess, fine. So that'll be a match that we'll get, I suppose. The crowd goes mild, I guess. So it's an excuse to get Sting on the pay-per-view. I think it's the pay-per-view. I have to double check, but I think it's the pay-per-view. Anyway, so that's it. Great match to finish it off. Solid start, solid finish as far as matches are concerned. There was some progression on a couple of storylines, which is always a good thing. We always appreciate that. Some perplexing elements. Like I said, Brian Cage I thought was ROH, but I guess he's in the AEW Championship Eliminator. So is Lance Archer, I guess. But at the same time, he just attacks people in the back. Everybody dies. That's kind of a thing. And then at the same time, where's Miro? I assume he'll get into this title eliminator tournament, I guess. Or maybe not. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Why, the questions that we have. How did Brian Cage end up back in the AEW title picture? Even though I don't recall him being in the title picture. How did, is Lance Archer just going to attack everybody in the back? Will Nyla Rose's crime spree ever end? Will she ever be stopped? These are questions that I have coming out of AEW Dynamite tonight. And the other question that I have is, in the go-home show, do we get a proper final send-off? And this is actually a legitimate question I have. Even though they have managed to have them both on TV, do we get anything between Jamie Hayter and Tony Storm on the go-home show? And the reason I focus on this is that this is your AEW interim. Get rid of the interim title. The AEW Women's Interim Championship, whatever, trademark, copyright, whatever we're calling it today, with the interim title. Get rid of that. Make it the proper championship, would be my opinion, and I've stated it already. But do they get a proper angle with the go-home? Because they had the video package. They had kind of the thing where they both kind of faced off against each other in this match with Sky Blue in the middle of it. But do you get some kind of an actual thing leading into the pay-per-view? I would like to see that. And I hope that we get some kind of a conclusion where Jade and Nyla Rose are there as well. I want both of those to have something going into the actual pay-per-view, something on the go-home show. I'm very concerned. My point is that some stuff feels rushed, we're just throwing it together. Some stuff has had a lot of time to develop, but it doesn't feel like it's gotten where it needs to go. And other elements of it is okay, so are we just going to make a mention of this as far as the go-home show? And also, maybe I missed it, and I could, please, if I did miss it, please correct me, because like I said, I had a couple of glitches and a couple of hang-ups on the broadcast. Was there a follow-up promo package of any kind? I saw the Delete the Elite one, but was there any kind of a promo or follow-up package for the House of Black? ? I don't recall seeing one, and I hope there was something, because otherwise, if you did the video package last week and then totally skipped it this week, that would be extremely disappointing. But now I have to go double check. Like, I'm kind of curious because I didn't see it. I might have missed it. But anyway, that's a question that I would have as well that I'd be kind of left with. Anyway, my overall verdict on it is that it was a better show than last week. There were some elements that were better. Still some questions like always, but I think that's always going to be the case as long as Tony Khan is trying to shoehorn a lot of different agendas into one show. But nonetheless, overall, an improvement from last week. I'm going to go with a flat C. Because I'm still not at the point of calling these good shows. There are good matches on these shows. There are good angles on these shows. But the disjointedness still hurts the overall presentation for me. But was it an improvement over last week? Absolutely. Like, substantial improvement. But I'm not all the way back to calling it a good show yet because we've still got the disjointedness. I love the MJF promo. I enjoyed the Moxley promo. There were promos in here, but there were also like a segment where they stack like 5 promos in a row. Video package promo, video package promo, video package promo. Like, guys, we got to find a balance. There has to be a structure here. And the Trent Barretta and Jay Lethal match, like even though it led to a promo again, the match, I didn't need it. You could have scratched that off the show and put something else on there. Like, just find a way. I did appreciate that they did a talking segment with Britt Baker and Saraya. I appreciated that it was a face-to-face there. That was fine. It dragged on a little long. Got a little awkward for me, but at least it was something. It was an actual in-ring, talking segment that forwarded the narrative and the story and at least got it to the match. You cleared up 2 things. Number 1, you're saying she's medically cleared. We'll see. Hopefully she is. And hopefully everything turns out well. And we established that we're going to have a match at Full Gear. Great. So you can promote the match. We've got 1 more week. We got the go home show and hopefully we'll get at least something out of that and then we'll be able to go from there. So anyway, overall, I call it a C. Curious what your thoughts are, and then that'll be it for us leading into next week and the Go Home Show. Now, if with some luck, if I'm able to find a little time to do it next week, I would love to then talk about kind of what I talked about a little earlier about some indie tendencies that have always been part of AEW, but I do think at this point they are starting to hold them back a little bit, and I want to kind of explain why. And that's something that hopefully I'll get a chance to work on a little bit that I'd like to do. Otherwise, thanks very much. Appreciate it. More videos coming up on the channel. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.